Welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined as always by Dakota Lasky. Dak, how are you doing today?
I'm not doing too shabby, actually. It's been a quiet weekend around here, but yeah, not too. Oh, I remember what I was going to bring up. So before the episode, I was thinking about things that I had forgotten to talk about last week. I remember 2 weeks ago we were just about to talk, or the latest like Minecraft Steve was coming to Smash, and I was like talking about whether or not Ridley would be buffed or not. And I forgot to comment on that. He didn't get buffed at all, and I was really tight about that. Like he got.
Oh, that's right. You were gonna pay me $5.
I know. Well, like technically he did get buffed, but like he didn't. It's like they're so negligible. It's like he didn't get any good substantial changes. He still sucks. So disappointing. Minecraft Steve is cool. That's what I remembered that I forgot to say, and now I've said it. Other than that, everything is all good in over here. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It feels like I'm living in Antarctica here. It's horrible. It's minus 20 degrees Celsius and snowy
Really?
and miserable. Oh, it's terrible.
Wow.
It doesn't feel like Halloween, which when you're listening to this, by God, it's gonna be pretty close to Halloween time. So yeah, it's pretty cold and brutal.
Are you
over
doing
here,
anything
but,
for Halloween?
Probably not. Probably
No?
not.
Yeah, probably.
Um,
Same here.
I would have went trick or treating, but the world being what it is,
No parties.
no, I don't think so. So actually, my birthday was this month too, and we didn't do anything. We didn't have a party or anything like that. We just went out for dinner, and that was pretty much all she wrote. But that's what you do when you're old and you have an inconsequential birthday. So whatever. But yeah, I don't think so, man. What about you?
No, I don't have any plans. Not that I rarely have plans for Halloween. Actually, no, that's false. The past few years, my friends from Connecticut have come down and we've gone out in the city. I remember last year, me and my friend went as Game of Thrones characters because remember that was a thing,
Oh, yeah.
way back
Who did
when.
you go as?
So my friend went as oh my God, why am I now blanking on who he went as? He went as Jesus Christ, Jon Snow. He went as Jon Snow, and I went as another one of his friends. I went as Jon Snow's friend. I went as another brother of the Night's Watch or whatever. So we were both
Right.
wearing the Ravens cloaks, the Night's Watch cloaks. But he had the Jon Snow wig. So people come up to us and be like, "Oh, you guys are Game of Thrones." He's like, "Yeah, I'm Jon Snow." And they're like, "Who are you supposed to be?" Like, I'm Jon Snow's friend, brothers of the Night's Watch. And I wasn't a specific character, but that was a good time. And I think I went as Kakashi from Naruto the previous year. But yeah, we'd go out into the city usually, and obviously now we can't really do that at all. I didn't put together any kind of costume plan, which is also lame too. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna go buy. Sadly, because I'm not I'm not huge into scary movie stuff and the creepy Halloween vibes. I like that stuff. I like jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins and stuff, but I don't really watch movies for the most part. I'm not a Nightmare Before Christmas kind of guy or something like that. But I like going out and dressing up and going out into the city on Halloween, so I'm gonna miss that.
Oh, I love watching Nightmare Before Christmas on Halloween or in and around Halloween. I used to do it as a kid, but you know what? I got to back up for a second there. A part of me, for a millisecond, was really excited when you said Kakashi, because I was like, Dak dressed up as the Scarecrow from Tingle's Ripened Balloon Trip of Love.
Yeah.
And then I realized that no one in the history of the world has ever done that. So, yeah, man, I'm with you. I'll probably watch Nightmare or The Shining or something. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna play a cute little game called Costume Quest. I don't know if any of you
Yes,
guys have heard of it.
dude, Costume Quest and Costume Quest 2. I have both of those on
Yes.
Steam.
So I played Costume Quest 1 a few years ago. I'm going to play Costume Quest 2 this year with Sam, and it's very, very charming. For anybody that doesn't know, it's like an RPG where you can transform into whatever costume you're wearing. So if you have a robot costume, you turn into a robot, and I think in Costume Quest 2 you're fighting evil dentists who want to take away candy for Halloween. It's very, very cute. So yeah, I think I'm going to fire that up sometime this week, but... yeah, other than that, man, nothing really. Like I said, it feels like the middle of February rather than Halloween here, so you can't do a whole lot.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Which is too bad.
I'm looking forward to some wintry cold weather, but we haven't gotten there just yet. It's still in like the 60s and 70s in New York. Like it's still like pretty. It's like sometimes chilly. Like probably now it's like in the 50s, like high 50s, low 60s. But yeah, it hasn't. It's not like super cold, but I'm glad kind of glad summer's over. I was getting sick of the heat.
Oh, you never say that up here, never, because it doesn't. You don't get a lot of it. But you know what, Dak? We have a lot to get into, so we better stop BSing around here. We are going to take a gargantuan task here, and we're going to be ranking. I guess ranking is maybe the wrong word, but we're going to be discussing and ranking the final boss fights of every single Metroid game in the series. There are 12 games, and so we have 12 final bosses here that we're going to be ranking. What we're going to do is we're just going to start from Metroid 1, and we're going to go to Metroid 2, and then Super Metroid, and we're going to talk about the final boss, and then we're going to say where we ranked that boss on our respective lists. I don't know what Dak's list looks like. He doesn't know what my list looks like. So at the end of the show, we will, we'll read out our whole list just for ease. But we got a lot to get into here, Dak. So I guess we better get started. Are you ready?
I am ready, though I do have to sadly preface this with we won't be talking about Metroid Prime from Pinball because Andy did not put Metroid Prime from Pinball on his list. I did. I had to, unfortunately, remove Metroid Prime Pinball from my list, but I'm sure someone's going to be like, well, wait, what? That's not all the games, Pinball. Just know that it's a good place in my heart, in my list.
And you know what? That is a wicked boss battle. Like for what it is, it's a really good boss battle. It's just you can't really rank it the same as everything else, right? Because it doesn't fit in that category. But also, I can't rank it myself because I've beat every Metroid game start to finish at least once, right? But like I can't say that about Pinball. I try, and I'm terrible. I'm terrible at it. I bought it for this show, and I was gonna be like, let's do an episode on it, and I still want to in the future, but yeah, I'm not very good at it. So I've never actually beat Metroid Prime myself. So I want to save that until I can actually say to all of the listeners here, like, yeah, I smoked Metroid Prime in Pinball, and I can't do that right now. So he's not on the list. Who is on the list though? Let's get it started. Let's go all the way back to the NES. We're talking Mother Brain, the original final boss of the Metroid series. Dak, where did you have Mother Brain ranked on your list?
So your list was out of like what 12, 13? It was 12, right?
It was 12, yeah.
12, yeah, okay. So Mother Brain NES for me was number 12.
Really? Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. It's just I like refreshing myself on all the boss battles and haven't played through all the games. It's just it's the most dated one. It's the oldest and it's the least engaging and all that. Like it was the first one, so like I can't really like put too much blame on it, but it's like barely a boss fight. Like most of it is fighting the Rinkas and like trying to stay in place, but then you're just pumping missiles into like a single slot and then that's it. Like it's over very quickly if you know what you're doing. And it's more of a test of like keeping your footing, I guess, than actually fighting a boss. Like you're fighting more of the environment than the actual enemy.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd always thought like it's a classic boss battle. Don't get me wrong. Like it's very iconic and all that, but compared to the other ones in the series, I couldn't put it very. I would say like maybe I'd put it up to like 11 at 10 at the highest, but I would say it's probably right at the bottom for me just because every other boss battle like either expands on that original boss battle or just does enough differently that it's much better than what the NES had to offer. But again, I mean that game was 30, 40 years old, whatever it is, right? Like it hasn't stood the test of time as well as some of the other Metroid bosses. So yeah, it's on the lower part of the list for me at the very bottom spot at number 12.
Oh, that's cold. I actually don't disagree, though. I had it at number 10, and the only reason that it's not last... 11 and 12 on my list are just, like, really awful battles. I think that they're just, like, really bad.
I'm
so,
sure
like,
I know
they're
what
not...
they are, too.
I'm sure you know what they are. I'm sure everybody knows what they are. So, like, the Mother Brain fight isn't... Like, it's not a bad fight, but like you said, like, it's not really a fight at all. It's just kind of like it's staying alive, and you're fighting the environment, and, like,
Yeah.
keeping your footing. I do think that the music for the NES is really cool, and like the music I feel like is a big part for me about adding to the ambiance of the final fight. So I'm gonna bring up music a lot, and I just think that the sprite work of Mother Brain looks really cool. So I do give it some points for that, but I mean it's not awful, so that squeaks it ahead of a few other fights on this list. But I mean, it's certainly nothing to compare to some of the latter fights that come in the Metroid series. So yeah, this one is low for me too. It's number 10, but not the bottom of my list. I'll say that.
All right.
All right, let's move on. Let's get to Metroid 2 and the Queen Metroid. And you know what? I actually I ranked this one kind of a little bit higher. I have it at number 7.
Okay.
I think that there's something. First of all, the sprite work on the Queen Metroid I think just looks really really awesome. It looks very much like kind of like a xenomorph from Alien, and obviously that's like a big inspiration. But the sprite work I think looks really cool. The music again, for what the Game Boy could produce, I think that it's very cool. And you know what? It's a simple fight, but I feel like the neck just goes absolutely crazy. Like it kind of rocks back, forth, up, down. Like it goes everywhere. And like I feel like it's very unhinged. And like the thing about Metroid 2, on the Game Boy specifically, is like everything feels so tight and compact. And like with that neck just going crazy, it seems like it's like 100 feet long. It feels like you don't really have a whole lot of room to move and not a lot of places to go. So I think that it's a very claustrophobic fight, and like I also like that it takes like 150 missiles or whatever it is, something stupid like that, in order to actually defeat the Queen Metroid. So like I'm kind of giving some props to Metroid 2 for using what it had at the time and working with that. It's probably there's definitely better fights than it on this list, but I think given what it had to work with, I think that it really maximized like this fight as best as it possibly could. So yeah, I put it decently high, number 7.
Yeah, I'm not too far off. I had the Metroid Queen from Return of Samus at number 8. So I agree with you. I actually thought this boss battle was a lot better than I remembered. Like, yeah, it's super claustrophobic. In a lot of Metroid boss fights, especially the 2D ones, are like you're in a small room and you pretty much can only stay on like sometimes you can only stay on like one side of the room and you're just hugging the wall and all that. And like this boss battle, you're literally like hugging like the bottom right corner. Like you have just nowhere to go, and then like sometimes you're able to jump out just in time. Like the neck, yeah, the Queen Metroid getting right up in your face and just dominating the entire like small little arena. And it's a weird looking one too, because you have that little like morph ball tunnel and in the bottom left there. Yeah, I think for its time, it does way more and is a lot better than the NES fight. And it definitely resembles more of like the other 2D Metroid games rather than like the original NES Metroid. Like in the sprite work for sure. The music's really good. Like, yeah, I think this is a solid boss battle for its time. And I love how it's just like a really intense fight. It takes, like you said, a lot of ammo. The boss is like, you're not fighting the environment as much as like literally the boss is like refuses to not be in your face the whole time. It just doesn't quit. And it's a cool concept. I liked it. The Metroid Queen from Return of Samus, not super high up on my list because again, it's still limited, compared to some of the other boss battles too, and all of that. But for its time, I think it's really good, and it stood up against the test of time better than the original, NES final boss Mother Brain. So yeah, I put this up at 8. So right next to your 7.
I will say, so we didn't include AM2R on our list.
No, we didn't.
Of final boss battles, but if we did, man, that game really made this fight like really really spectacular. I thought that would be decently high up on my list if we were ranking the AM2R version of this fight on our list. So yeah, I think that it's really solid. Let's keep going here. I feel like this one is going to be perhaps divisive for us. So I'll let you go first here, Dak. What do you think about Mother Brain from Super Metroid?
Mother Brain from Super Metroid is at 7 for me, right above the Metroid Queen fight. So this is like middle-ish, mid-tier boss fight for me, and I'm assuming that it's a lot higher for you. because I assumed
Yeah.
that you thought that it was what I was going to say. I just said, and yeah, this fight is. I mean, again, it's an iconic boss fight. Like everyone knows this fight, but when you really break it down, I don't think it's like the best of boss fights. Like you are like stuck on against that wall, but you don't feel like super claustrophobic like in the Metroid Queen fight from Metroid 2. Like this one, like you have a decent room, but you really don't need to do anything other than just hug that right wall. I think Mother Brain's attacks aren't like the, I don't know, the most intense. Like I feel like they're kind of easy to dodge for the most part. But I think my biggest problem with this boss battle is there's so much downtime. There's so much of you just kind of standing there and waiting for stuff to happen. And like the first time you play that boss fight, it's really cool. It's awesome. Like the baby Metroid comes in and Samus is like almost down for the count. All this stuff's happening, and then Mother Brain like disintegrates, and all like all this stuff happens. But then like if you've played the game a bunch and you've fought that boss fight a bunch of times, it does kind of get old over time, I think. But it's a really, and also I'm not the biggest fan of the music. I always thought the music was kind of annoying in this boss fight. Not gonna lie, I always like every time I hear it, it's like a horn like farting or something. Like I don't like. Yeah, but it doesn't sound as cool as you are making it out to seem. Like when I just listened to it again, I was like, oh, it's like grating on the ears. Yeah, this one is. It's a fight that I think is cool. It has a lot of good elements, but it does drag on a little bit. It's not like the hardest fight. It has some stuff I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's right in the middle for me.
Okay.
I want to hear what you have to say though.
So I have to confess, I was kind of expecting you to say what you said, except for about the music. Actually, I can't believe you don't love that music. I think it's awesome.
I don't know.
But I was kind of expecting you to say what you said, and I actually don't disagree. I think that I have this ranked number 3 on my list just for just to throw that out there, but like it's not a super hard boss battle. I mean, what this boss battle is, it's more of like a story-based boss battle than it is a final boss battle. Like, I think that Metroid in general sometimes ends on the wrong boss fight, if that makes sense. Like, because to me, the final boss fight of Super Metroid really like is kind of geared at Ridley. Like, everything's setting up to that Ridley fight. It's he's what started the chain of events at the beginning of the game. The Ridley fight kind of feels like the finale to me, and then when you go and fight Mother Brain, it's just kind of like taking care of what's left in the remaining business. But that being said, this is more of like a story-based boss battle, but I think that the story, to me, of like the baby Metroid just resonates so strongly with me, and like they continue to expand on that relationship with future games like in Fusion and in Samus Returns, and it makes the final like ending of Super Metroid that much stronger to me. So like, I feel like that story really carries the day for me and makes the fight, which is like, if you're ranking like the actual battle, like this probably would be a middle of the pack boss battle, I think, for me. But the story behind it really elevates it for me to the upper echelon. And when you get into the second half of Mother Brain, like the attacks are pretty devastating, which I also do like, especially like the death laser is like, just it feels like it's a brutal attack, and like when the Metroid comes in and saves you from that, it's just like such a wicked moment, I feel like. So it kind of depends on your mileage of like how much the story, like how much you like the story kind of mixing in with the battle, because if you don't and you're judging it just based on the fight, I can definitely see why it's ranked lower. But if you're kind of like, all right, well, I'm here for like the story and like the boss battle is kind of secondary, I think that it makes sense to rank it a little bit higher, which is, the camp that I fall in.
No, I definitely see what you're saying. I was definitely looking at it like as a standalone fight, really. But yeah, you're right. It is like I would say more focused on wrapping up the story and like being a culmination of what's happened, rather than I think like being the most epic of boss battles. Even though I think it is an epic kind of fight, but
yeah.
I think it works really well as like a finale and like a culmination of the story. I don't know if I would like agree that like Ridley was like even though he was the catalyst for it, I never really thought of that. Like, would Ridley make more sense as like the finale, like the final boss fight in this game? I still think Mother Brain makes the most sense, and I like that, and I like the story elements. I just think the actual boss fight itself isn't as engaging as the story elements that's surrounding it that it's like packaged with.
Right.
And with those parts intact, yeah. Like maybe I think if I were to redo my list a little bit here, maybe I would bump Mother Brain up like a unit or so, maybe. I don't know. I'm still looking at them because I still think the biggest part of me, at least for me, for the boss battles, is how like fun and like awesome the gameplay is for the boss battle. Because for the most part, a lot of the boss battles in like the Metroid games like aren't like super story based, I would say. But yeah, this one I think that was my biggest issue. Is like what was more important, like the actual boss battle or like the story elements. And I think like what stuck out to me more was like the boss battle elements. But I do agree, like yeah, the story culmination is huge, and like that's a really big part of it, and you can't take that out necessarily. So maybe I would rearrange it and put it up a little higher. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I was interested too. Actually, maybe we'll just so next I was gonna go to Prime, but maybe let's go to Fusion next because I feel like we're gonna do like a little dipsy do on this one and like do a little switcheroo because I think that you're going to have this a little bit higher, whereas I had Fusion a little bit lower. And I feel like they're kind of like the same kind of final boss battle where like it's more of a story based like boss battle where like the fighting is secondary to what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead with mine. I had it ranked at number 8 on my list, and there are a few reasons. I feel like again like Metroid. Sometimes I feel like it ends with the wrong boss battle, and this one to me like everything was leading up to the final boss being with the SAX, and like you do fight the SAX right immediately before this, so it's almost like a 1 and 2 kind of a battle, but and it makes sense with the with everything going on the BSL that like there's now this Omega Metroid. I guess to me like the thing about it is that it feels like a little bit of a step down from fighting a Queen Metroid to just fighting an Omega Metroid, and that's probably just my weird stance on it, but like the fight itself is just very very easy. The first half is basically story driven where the SAX comes in and gets destroyed and you absorb the SAX. And after that, when you absorb her, like the fight really is just pretty simple. You move back and forth and just shoot the Omega Metroid and avoid its claws, and it's pretty much one and done. And usually, I think that like timed fights in Metroid are pretty intense, like when the clock is ticking and you have to escape. But like this one was very very easy for me. But like this is kind of the same fight as Super almost, where it's like it's a story driven fight. I just think that the story didn't maybe connect with me as much as like the Baby Metroid one did, so I ranked it a little bit lower on my list. What say you? Am I right? Did you have this a little bit higher?
Yeah, I did. I had it at 5. Yeah, you're right on target with that. And I agree, and it does have a lot of similarities to Super. I think it's just I am a bigger fan of like Metroid Fusion than Super, so like we're both biased. Like you'd pick Super
Right.
over Fusion, so for me, I always love this boss battle because yeah, it's on a timer. I think it works great as like a boss battle right after the SAX because yeah, the SAX is like your driving force of the fight, like and Ridley is in a lot of or driving force of the story, like Ridley is a lot of the time. And that boss battle is really sick, but I think the sequence of having to go against the Omega Metroid where there's time on the line, you're trying to escape, and it's like culminating with that moment after, like as you said, finding out all this stuff about the Metroid experimentation. I think the Omega Metroid is like a perfect follow through with that, and like you're right at the end of the line, like you're about to get out, and then like this thing shows up. You're like, oh, like all right, let's do this. And I always thought the Omega Metroid was so like intimidating and terrifying looking as a kid, and I definitely think the Omega Metroid is a step up from the Metroid Queen because the Omega Metroid just looks so grotesque and like it's like the inside of it is like all gross and very visceral looking. I always loved the sound of its like claw swiping, and yeah, like you are just like weaving in and out. But I always thought that like the weaving in and out, trying to get those shots in on its chest, was more of an engaging boss fight to me than standing in place and jumping that you do in the Mother Brain fight in Super Metroid. But I do see what you're saying. Like it isn't like the hardest of boss fights, but I at least in my opinion, at least for me, like I connect a lot more with that story. I like like you get put down to 1 in the SAX, like you absorb the SAX and go back to full form. I was like, oh, that's awesome, and it does have a lot of similarities in that way with the Baby Metroid giving you a bunch of power at the end of that fight. So I think they're really just like two variations of a similar fight, right? And it really just depends on like what like you would like what elements of the story and whatnot you like more than the other one. So I don't really think like one or the other is necessarily better. It's really just kind of like your preference. But at least for me, I always thought like it felt a lot more intense and like right on the edge of your seat. And I like the music a lot more than the farting horn from Super Metroid. That's what it sounds like to me. But yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong in your analysis of it either. But I will say that I like the Omega Metroid being the final fight because it does give you that like the SAX not like redeeming itself in a way, but getting involved in that, like, you know, like I like that. It was unique. It wasn't just okay, you defeat the SAX and then you move on, or you just defeat the boss and move on. Like it kind of helps you in a little way. I thought that was cool. So yeah, this one's 5 for me. I always loved the fusion fight. Obviously, there's another fight after this. I would say, you know, outranks this, but like for the longest time, for 2D Metroid, the Omega Metroid fight was my favorite.
Yeah, and you know, I actually never put together until like probably today, like how kind of similar in concept like the fusion and the super boss battle were.
Yeah, they mirror each other very well.
That seems like such an obvious thing, but yeah, I never really stopped to analyze like, you know, how close these things actually are. So no, I totally dig what you're saying, and I thought that was gonna kind of be the case, and I think that that's totally fine. I think both of those are cool. It's just like you said, one kind of connects with the story a little bit more in different games. So
and it's like Aliens, you know, like you're fighting in the hangar against the big boss alien at the end. That's another thing I liked about the Omega Metroid fight too, is that at least for Fusion, that like area of like where the ship hangar is a place that you revisit often in the game. And like,
right.
So like when you have that fight there at the end, that kind of resonates with me more than like the Mother Brain, I don't know, like generic steel arena you fight it in that really you have no connection to at all. I always loved in Fusion how you go back to like essentially where you started and you're fighting the final boss there, and then the ship shows up and you take off just in time. I always thought that was sick. So
it would have been so badass if the Koras and the Edakuns like rammed the Omega Metroid with your ship. That would have been so good.
Yes, I would love maybe in the remake. Maybe in the
Fusion remake.
The remake in the Fusion remake, the Omega Metroid fight is gonna be so sick. I can't wait for that.
All right, let's keep it going. Let's move on to Metroid Prime from Metroid Prime. I had this one ranked very, very highly, actually. I had it ranked at number 2.
Ooh.
This is, I think it's such a wicked fight, and a big part of that for me, kind of, it goes into the music, like the music that starts playing when you first see the Metroid Prime in the impact crater. And a lot of like the juice of this fight for me is like you've been reading so much about this poison that is buried in this impact crater. So like a lot of it is the buildup, but I think that it's a really fun fight too. Like it makes really clever use of all of your different beams. You need to switch back and forth to them. It feels like it hits hard. It feels like kind of that classic claustrophobic kind of brawl at the opening stages, and like you keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper into the planet, which I think is very cool. The second phase is really awesome too. The Metroid Prime looks just like demonic. I like that you get they do the hyper beam, I think, really well in this fight, where like you can stand on the pools of Phazon, and like there's just enough other stuff going on with like the Metroids and the Hunter Metroids, and it makes really good use of all of your different like visors and stuff as well. So I think that it's kind of pulling in all of the gameplay aspects of Metroid Prime really nicely. I think that the setting is really cool, and like, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with the fight itself, but I think that the post credit where like the hand pops out the Phazon suit is just like a really, really nice touch. I have a real soft spot for this fight. I remember it very fondly from when I first played it, and I still love playing this fight to this day.
Well, Andy, so far our lists are pretty close together because I also had this at number 2 on my list.
Wow.
Yeah, this is such a good fight. For the longest time, this was my favorite fight in the Metroid series, and it's still my favorite boss fight in the 3D Metroid in Metroid Prime. It's so good. Yeah, first of all, the build up. You're learning about this boss, like the worm inside the crater, inside the planet, like corrupting everything. But like that initial like shot where like Samus walks in, you see kind of over her shoulder, and like the and Metroid Prime's like in like a cocoon kind of looking like pose, kind of like hanging from the ceiling, and it has this like it's such a surreal shot. And then it comes down, and I love the fight. You know, you're switching between weapons, you're chasing it deeper into the planet, you're going into those little like grooves in the ground with your morph ball to avoid the charges at you. It's such a cool fight. Like the arena, like you feel like you're like so deep in the planet, and you have no backup. I think I actually might like the first phase more than the second phase. Now that I think about it more, and I love how the Metroid Prime itself looks like this huge insectoid. Like it looks way more like a spider, awesome. Like arachnid. Like it's such a one of the coolest, I think, enemy designs in the entire franchise. They 100% 11 out of 10 hit it right on the mark, like nail to coffin. So I loved it. I love that fight. The second phase is also really cool. It's like even deeper, like the design of the boss Prime, like the cool like core oozy, like gelatinous, like wormy technical, it was really well designed. The fight's cool. Yeah, like it forces you to reposition a lot because of the Metroids and also trying to get into the phase pools. And this is like it's another such an iconic fight. I mean, they really nailed it. The music, you're right, is so good. Like it really like strips away a little bit of like that isolation ambience for like a little more action, sure, but like it's such a great finale to the game. And then yeah, it sets like little did you know when you're fighting it for the first time, it would set up so much, you know? Like I still remember the first time I fought, you know, Metroid Prime, and it did take me a little bit to get to that like cool cutscene, but when I finally did, I never really realized at the time how much it would like lead to some more stuff and how like Metroid Prime would still be involved in the games like 2 games later and whatnot. So yeah, this is such a good boss fight. 100% one of the best, I think, Nintendo boss fights, period. Not even just in Metroid, but certainly in Metroid. And I think would be high on anyone's list that's ranking boss fights in this series. So yeah, 2 for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, this one, like, it has it all. This would have been number 1 for me for a long time. I'm deducing our number 1s are probably the same. But that's okay. It's such a good fight. And, like, yeah, you know, the music is actiony, but like I feel like it's I don't know, there's something about it that just like pumps me up, but it still has that creepy kind of Metroid tone underneath. For me, the music really, really sells this encounter. I think I would actually agree. I like the first part a little bit more, but I love the second part too. The whole package is just really great. So yeah, let's keep it going. We'll float over to Metroid Prime 2. And we're not doing Emperor Ing, but we will talk about Dark Samus. Man, the Dark Samus just looks demonic, just absolutely scary and unhinged. The perfect for Halloween. Mm-hmm. You can see like the skull creeping through the mask. This is like really creepy. She looks like she's coming undone. I will say I ranked it pretty much middle of the pack. I ranked it at number 6, and I did that because, you know, at this point in the game, I think that this is the 3rd time that you've fought Dark Samus, and it's not, I wouldn't call it diminishing returns, but, you know, I mean, it is the 3rd time you fought Dark Samus, so it's not new and exciting, but it is really intense because you're on a timer. The planet is going to explode, so you got to dispose of Dark Samus quickly. And she has lots of new moves, even though that's your 3rd fight. She's like making clones of herself. You got to track her using the Echo Visor. Lots of really cool stuff. And I like the theme too. It's like the remix of the Escape theme from Metroid 1. So I like this fight. It's not like the crescendo of Dark Samus battles, as we'll talk about later, but I think that it's really solid. Just for the way that Dark Samus looks alone is just almost right there. It sells it.
Yeah, you know, this one I wasn't sure where to place this one, and I ended up placing it at number 6. So,
okay. So we got the same place.
Yeah, I ended up putting it at number 6 as well. I agree with what you said. Yeah, this is, I think, you pretty much covered it for me. It's number 1. It's diminishing returns. I think that's definitely true. Like, you fought her a few times already, and I think after, like, once you've played the game a bunch too, like, it further multiplies how many times you fight against Dark Samus. The fight is really cool. I think the biggest issue with my biggest issue with the fight is that even though she does a lot of cool moves, a lot of times she spends like standing there or like floating in midair and not doing anything, and you kind of just like shooting shots into her. And I remember that a lot in that boss battle, like that, and like looking for her with the echo visor, which sometimes can be a little tedious, but like otherwise, I think it's a cool boss fight. I was thinking about putting it a little lower, but yeah, it's a solid fight. It's not one that I would like put out as like, it's not my top 5, that's for sure. But I think a lot of the time with Dark Samus, like Dark Samus's value and like what I like about her is not like secluded to the boss battles, right? It's like the whole package, like her story influence and the other fights as a whole. Like I wouldn't rank it just based on like how fun it is to fight against Dark Samus at the end of the game. So,
Right.
but that being said, I think it is a pretty solid boss fight. There's a lot that's happening, like you said. There's a lot of there's new moves. You're not just like fighting her using the same moves like every time, which probably would have sucked. I think the AI like leaves a little bit to be desired at times. So, but otherwise, yeah, I think that's a pretty solid fight, right in the middle of the pack for me too.
I would actually say of the 3 Dark Samus fights in Echoes, this one is probably my least favorite. I think my favorite is the first, and second favorite is the second, and then like this, which I mean, maybe it is diminishing returns, but which yeah, I mean, that being said, this is still a really really fun fight. I like this fight better than the Emperor Ing fight. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on. I'll let you give your thoughts here. Metroid Zero Mission. We've got Robot Ridley as the final boss. We've talked about him a little bit on our definitive ranking of the Ridley fight list, but tell us what you think about Robot Ridley as the final boss.
Yeah, Robot Ridley, the Ridley Robot. I had Ridley Robot at number 10 for me. So in that bottom 3, and I think this is probably a bottom 3 pick for you as well, if not your very bottom pick, is what I'm assuming. But yeah,
I have it at number 11.
Okay, so then I know what your bottom one is, but the Ridley Robot is one of those fights where I love the concept. I always like the idea of Ridley building a robot in his own image, and like it's like a half-built robot that's like clawing at you and shooting at you from its like deep in like this dark room, and you're trying to get out in time, and you got to deal with this Mecha Ridley. And this is also the first time that like quote unquote Ridley was the final boss, kind of, but not really. Obviously, it's not him.
Mm-hmm.
But the fight itself is obviously like one of the easiest boss fights in the whole franchise. I don't think I've seen anyone lose to Mecha Ridley. I don't know if I have. But I like the idea. It's like it's a boss. Every time I fight Mecha Ridley, I'm like, oh, this. Like, the Ridley Robot could be, like, a little harder. Like, could have been executed just a little better. And almost, to me, kind of feels like it was a late addition to the game, or, like, one that wasn't, like considered throughout the entirety of its development. Like, maybe they added it towards the end to, like, ramp up the intensity and whatnot and give Ridley another appearance or something in the game. I don't know. But it always feels like it has, like, more potential. It's, like, it's nearly there to be like a great boss battle. Like it has some cool stuff. Like I love the Ridley clawing at you with like its extendo claw and it's different weapons that it's shooting at you. Like I think it's a cool idea, but again, you could just you just stand on the left side and you just jump in place and shoot, and it's and it's less engaging than the Super Metroid Mother Brain fight, which is essentially the same thing. It's it's a smaller room, and I guess like what you're shooting at for Ridley isn't that hard to hit, and there's not like a huge story element to this either, right? Like it's in your way, you got to kill it, and all right, you do it, and you move on. So it doesn't have like that story element that Super Metroid or Metroid Fusion had for its final boss. So yeah, I think again it's a boss that I have like fond memories of just from playing the game, because I like I like Zero Mission. And I like Ridley, and I always thought it was a cool idea. I love like the little bit of lore behind it and the concept. It never really hit that mark. It never really hit its full potential for me, and that's a boss that I would potentially like to see revisited if done better, because I think it could really be expanded upon. But as it is, yeah, it's one of the weaker bosses for me. I put it at number 10.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot of it, right? Like I'll kind of live in a world of contradiction here though, and say that like I ranked this one somewhat the middle of the pack / high on my Ridley fight list, but like as a final boss, it's pretty bad. It's just like pathetically easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a very good fight. I will say that like there's a big drop off from number 11 to number 12. So like I still enjoy this fight, and I have a soft spot for it because like I remember the first time I played Zero Mission, I assumed probably like everyone else that the game ended after you beat Mother Brain, and when it didn't, I was just like, oh sweet. And so like I like the idea of fighting the robot as a final boss, but I mean it's just like it's so pathetically easy that I just couldn't justify ranking it over anyone else on this list. So it's number 11 for me, but I still enjoy it. So for whatever that's worth, let's move on. Let's talk about one that I'm sure that you are probably excited to talk about. How do you say this guy's name? Goria?
Goria, yeah, or Goria. I think it's Goria though.
Goria.
I think.
All right. Well, Goria from Metroid Prime Hunters. It's been a long time since I have fought this one in person. Probably like 10 years, I bet you. So I'll let you go first, and I'll kind of chip in some thoughts afterwards.
So I put Goria at number 3. Goria is number 3 for me, and I gotta say, like, I am happy I put it up here because when I revisited Hunters a little bit recently, and then just to refresh myself before this episode, I'm like, yeah, this is an awesome boss fight. And Metroid Prime Hunters isn't a game that like had the strongest bosses, right? Like there were even like repetitive ones and all of that. It was really more so about like running into the hunters and fighting them in the campaign than of course, in multiplayer. But this boss fight I always thought was so sick. Like first of all, I think Goria has a really cool design. The arena looked really awesome. Like the music is so sick. I think the Goria fight music is some of the best like boss battle music in the entire series, like bar none. You gotta switch between your weapons a bunch. The different forms are cool, like you're fighting like the sphere itself and then like the Goria main form or whatever. But the reason why I really love this boss fight is because at the end of it, when you get the Omega Cannon and you're fighting its third form, like its flying form, you're fighting it not like in the arena, but like the outer part where there's a bunch of platforms. It's like, I think it might be like, at least what it looked like it was the biggest area like you fight a boss in, or one of the largest like in the game, like because it's not only really big, but there's a bunch of verticality as well, and you're like moving in, like hiding in cover and whatnot as it's floating around. Like I always loved that boss fight. It was so cool, and I think it was a really great culmination to the game. The cutscenes in Hunters are so sick, and I thought the cutscene for Goria was also really awesome. Like yeah, this was always one of my favorite boss fights in the Metroid series, just because of like it felt really intense. Like everything just feels like it was done so well. Really great end to the game, and it was actually a good boss fight in a game that kind of lacked that. So because all the other bosses weren't as good, like this boss even looks better in retrospect because it was an actual good boss and an actual boss you want to look forward to. So I know like you don't really have the same attachment to Hunters as I do, nor have you like played it as often, I would assume, but at least for me, like I always loved this one. The scale, like just the intensity and like how badass it felt fighting Goria, I thought it was really cool. So this one's up at 3 for me.
All right, so yeah, I definitely dunked on this one a little bit. I had it at number 9.
Yeah, I imagine that.
The thing about it is like I think that the concept of this boss battle is pretty cool. Like the first phase, like actually throughout the whole phase, throughout all 3 phases, you have to make use of the different weapons that you have, and like he's changing different colors, and like I remember you have to hit those widget spinners on the wall.
Yeah, the widget spinners. Yeah.
And like it conceptually it's pretty cool, but like the problem with this and the problem with Hunters in general for me is like this boss battle requires you to do some like fairly precise aiming to hit the little orbs or little eyeballs or whatever they are on Goria. And like for me, I just hate stylus controls on anything. Like if anyone here listens to my Zelda podcast, like you know that I am constantly dumping on Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass. I don't like that. And I don't like Hunters either with the stylus controls. I just think that it's hard to use, it's unintuitive. So that really brings this fight down to me. It brings what is otherwise a very good fight really down low on the list for me, just because controlling the fight is just it's a bad experience for me. I think that the phase with the Omega Cannon is very cool. I think that the music is pretty cool. I think that the setting is pretty cool. Cycling between the weapons, even though you kind of saw that gimmick with Metroid Prime, is pretty cool. But it's like none of that really matters if controlling it just feels bad. And unfortunately, that's kind of where I land on this, and
Right.
which is too bad because like I think that what you're saying is valid. Like this is a pretty cool fight. It's just like I can't get around how it controls. Man, if they would just like if they had released this on the Wii U or something like that with dual analog instead, this would be it would basically be a completely different game. If they had made dual analog on the Virtual Console,
dude. I just
but
want them to re-release, like remake it, do another Hunters. Like it's such a shame that it's like confined to the DS. I see what you're saying though. Yeah, like I think that's one of the reasons I like the fight too, is because you do got to be accurate, and I never really had the biggest issue with controls. But I definitely understand what you're saying. Like if you're not good with or enjoy the controls, then it completely changes the game and the boss fight for you. So I definitely understand what you're saying.
yeah. Yeah, so I suspect that'll probably be our biggest gap on our lists.
Yeah.
But let's move on. Let's get to Aurora Unit number 313 from Metroid Prime 3. I had this one ranked actually somewhat high. I had it ranked at number 4 on my list. And I think that it's a really solid fight. I think that like the music is really cool. Like, first of all, I think that the setting is like awesome. You're on Planet Phase. It looks super creepy. You're fighting like it's the crescendo of this giant war you've been waging and that Dark Samus has been waging. You still, I mean, so you immediately before this you fight Dark Samus, and like that's your fourth fight against Dark Samus so far. So like I like that they give you this different like option to or different fight to end the game on. I think that like the music, like I said, is really awesome. It kind of is like a little bit of a remix of like the Metroid Prime music, but like you can almost hear like that twinge of like the horror, like the high pitched horror from Metroid Fusion when they're doing cutscenes or whatever. I noticed that, and yeah, I think that the design of the Aurora unit looks really cool. It's like it almost looks like Mother Brain mixed with like a Metroid, and it's got that creepy spine, which almost looks like the spine of the Queen Metroid. I think that it looks really cool. The boss fight, I think, is like solid enough. You knock it down, you bust open the latch with your grapple beam, and at the second phase when it's flying around is very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that this is a pretty solid fight, and I like that it spits out Dark Samus clones at you sometimes. So like you can still fight Dark Samus, but you're not fighting like Dark Samus per se. So yeah, this one is really good. I ranked it higher on my list.
So I realized that I messed up my list while we're doing this. I think I said Dark Samus was at 6 for me, and I put 2 6s on my list.
Oh no!
So Dark Samus was actually 7 for me. Aurora Unit was 6 for me. So I'll have to re go through my list at the end here. But yeah. So I think yeah. Yeah. So 11. So yeah. Okay. Aurora Unit was 6. Dark Samus was 7. I agree with all fronts. I think Aurora Unit was a boss that I didn't remember too much, but then when I went back to it, I was like, oh yeah, this boss fight's actually really good. The I guess like it's the spine form reminded me of like Flagra a little bit, but not in like just how he looked, not or how it looked, not really in like the gameplay. But it is like it is really like creepy, like horror, like grotesque looking again. It's one of those bosses that really is visceral looking to you, and I think the flying phase is really good. I think that's the reason why I ranked it up at 6 was the spine phase is okay. The flying phase though, when it's just the head, I think is a really, really good boss fight. There's a lot of, it's coming at you like from all different angles. This part is actually kind of silly and almost made me derank a little bit, but like when it's spinning on the ground and like flying at you at like ground level, like spinning like a top, I always thought was really silly, but it was actually like kind of hard to fight against at times. This is a fight that might actually be interchangeable with me in terms of ranking with Dark Samus and Prime 2. It's around that area where it's pretty solid. There's a good amount of like the gameplay itself is good. It doesn't have like the super strongest like story element, I guess. Like it is culminating the story, but it's not like to the level of Baby Metroid or Omega Metroid, I would say, right, in terms of like the story.
Right.
Yeah, this was a cool fight. I always thought this was a well done like fight. It's not like one of my favorites, but it's solidly done. I really can't knock it for too much. Maybe except just how the head looks a little silly doing its top move. But like, other than that, I always thought this was a really well done fight. And I apologize I messed my list up, but it's in that middle area for me. I'd put it at like 6 or 7.
I always had a heck of a time hitting it when it's flying at
Yeah.
like, the back of its head. That
easy.
I always had a hard time with that.
It's not easy.
No. All right. Well, let's keep it going here. Let's go over to Metroid Other M, and I guess we should kind of specify here. We actually had like a little bit of a hard time figuring out what we were gonna call the final boss of Metroid Other M, because you have the Queen Metroid, which is actually a pretty sick fight, and then you have the cutscene shenanigans with MB, and then you're fighting all the different aliens, and then like the game ends. Yeah, whatever they were called, whatever. I unfortunately watched that entire cutscene, and I never want to do that again. So we decided, you know what, whatever. The final boss of Other M is going to be Phantoon, because that's like the last boss you fight. It's the post-credit boss, and you know what? Say what you will about Metroid Other M, and we do say a lot about it. But however, this Phantoon boss fight is awesome, I think. I think that it's one of the better boss fights in Metroid. I had it ranked number 5 on my list. And Phantoon looks... he looks awesome. I really like the idea that, like, the Phantoon that we see in Super Metroid is, like, only part of him exists in, like, our physical space, or, like, our reality, and the rest of him exists in, like, this other dimension kind of thing. Because, like, we see this Phantoon, and it's not just the head and the eye. It's, like, the entire body, and there's tentacles going everywhere. I think the look just, like, it sells it so much. I like, too, that it's, like, it's a post-credit optional boss fight, because we don't have that in Metroid. So, like, I really liked that idea. It plays very similarly to Super Metroid Phantoon, where you've got the blue flames coming at you from every direction. You've also got, like, the little Phantoon hands. It's a very, very cool fight. You can do, like, a lot of your counters, from what I remember, and, it's been a long time since I played, but, like, it didn't feel like you could cheese it like you could in the Ridley fight. For this one, I remember it being actually somewhat challenging. I think that the lethal strike on the eyeball was really cool, and I just liked that Phantoon kind of came back. Like, it was a very fan servicey kind of a battle, but it worked for me. I liked it a lot, and I think that it added. It kind of I won't say it redeemed Other M in a big way, but like it was nice to leave Other M on that note, rather than the MB Madeline Bergman business, which I think probably would have left a sour taste in the mouth of anyone finishing this game. At least this boss, like this final boss fight, makes it a little bit easier to swallow the cocktail. Maybe it's like a chaser of the really bad cocktail that was Other M. I don't know, but I like it. I like it.
I honestly wish this battle was not optional. Like, I wish you had to do it, because that way everyone at least get to experience this fight. Because I'm sure there might be some people who never even played it. Unfortunately, though, that means they might not even played Other M, which is a good thing. So, I put this battle at 4 actually. So, I always like to crap on Other M, and I would usually say that the only thing that this game does well are the cool finishing moves. But I will say that some of the boss fights are not bad, and this is definitely the best boss fight in the game, I think. Phantoon is so awesome, and considering how the game goes previously, like, some fan service was a godsend. Like, it was so nice to be like, oh, I recognize this. Like, oh, this is great. Like, just, yeah, I'll fight Phantoon. I don't care if this makes sense. Just get me out of the whatever's happened previously. Like, that's how I'd always felt about that. And it's such a sick boss fight. I love the set. Like, you're fighting, like, in the vacuum of space on, like, the bridge of the ship or whatever, as it's, like, attacking you through the glass, and the eyes, like, wildly snapping at you. You got, like, the hands, the fireballs, the eyeballs, and you're right, you can't really cheese it, because even if you do spam the dodge move, like, there's enough eyeballs or flames all the time, you'll clip into something else and get hit. Like, there's, like, the fire, like, shots on the ground that, like, rise up in, like, red and black. It's yeah, really cool fight. It's super intense, like, and Phantoon looks awesome. Like, he looks so sick.
Looks
like,
so
they
cool.
nailed it. I was like, I wish they had nailed everything else in this game as well as they nailed this fight. Like, it was really well done. He's such like a Lovecraftian monster that it's just really awesome to take him on and kill him. And then you defeat him, and his eye like bangs against the ground. It's like freaking out, and then it just like fades out into space, and then I think he ends up like blowing up or something. I don't know, but yeah, I thought it was really cool. I don't really understand or why they brought Phantom into this game other than fan service, but you know what? That's more than enough for me. A really awesome fight. It's a really like takes advantage of how like other M plays too. So I think it was really well done. I really wish like the game itself was up to par, where this boss fight is. Like if it was able to be on that level, then it would probably be a way better game. But unfortunately, it's not even remotely close to that. Phantoon though is so well done. Glad he came back. I honestly might even think I like this battle more than the Super Metroid Phantoon battle. To be honest, like it is actually a cool fight. It's just a shame that it's locked all the way at the end of the game in a game I don't want to play. So that being said, yeah, this is 4 for me. Phantoon was really up there. It was a really solid fight.
Nice, and I think that it's a good reason that you're fighting Phantoon as well. Like you're getting Adam's helmet, which is kind of
right,
neat.
yeah.
And I think what you said like really resonated. Like after the mess in the story, like a little bit of fan service just went like so far, and I think that actually makes this battle even better.
Absolutely,
because it's like, oh, for God's sakes, finally a Metroid enemy. Although I will say, actually, I thought that the Queen Metroid fight from Other M was really good too. I don't know how you feel about that, but I guess we'll save that for, I think we're gonna do Other M on our 1 year anniversary, so everybody listening can look forward to that.
That's coming soon.
It is coming soon. It's what is this? 30, 33, 34? It's gonna sneak up on us, I think.
It might even be the 50th episode spectacular or something,
Yeah, there you go. Mark your calendars. All right, let's go over to Federation Force, Samus and Master Brain. This fight is the drizzling you-know-whats. This is horrible. This is the worst boss battle in Metroid. This is number 12, and it's not even close. We talked about this on our Federation Force episode, but like this is just horrible. Like the premise is horrible. The space pirates have captured Samus. They didn't kill her. Instead, they mind controlled her. That's horrible. The setting is horrible. You're in this like pinball room where there's electrified walls everywhere around. The battle is horrible. You basically just shoot Samus into the wall, and Samus is like a million times bigger for some reason. And then after you're done the battle and Samus is like covered in debris, you just leave her to die, which makes no sense because she's like the galactic savior 3 or 4 times over at this point. You think that like this Federation grunt would go in there and try and rescue her, and then you have to go and platform your way, and you find Master Brain, which is like the locking mechanism. And this could have actually been kind of a cool battle, because there is a cool battle in Federation Force where like you have to it's where all the boxes and like there's different things shooting at you, but instead you just shoot it and then you're done. It sucks. Oh, this boss battle sucks. It's the last one. It's not even close. It like nobody wants to fight Samus. Nobody wants that.
Honestly, dude, the reason why I didn't put it at 12, I put it at 11. The only reason why I didn't put it at 12 is because it's almost so bad it circles back to being like fun. Like I can laugh at it and that I get some enjoyment from it in that way. Like the Mother Brain NES fight it doesn't stimulate me in any kind of way. It doesn't really make me, it doesn't elicit any kind of reaction or emotion from me a lot of the time nowadays. And even like the first time I ever like played it, like it wasn't like I grew up playing that game, so like it had that kind of a feel. But this fight like makes me laugh because it's so bad that I almost get some kind of enjoyment out of it, and it elicits a reaction from me. So I couldn't put it at the very bottom. It is spectaculararily bad. I don't understand why the space pirates would not just kill her or imprison her somewhere.
It makes no sense.
Or why? I mean, I get because of the game, like they're using the power of some, I don't know, sphere-related thing. So that's why like Samus is in like ball form when you fight her. Because I was like, why wouldn't they just have her be in human form? Like she'd be even way more dangerous than rolling around as a big beach ball. Because that's essentially what happens. Like the fight, she's literally just like, it's like the Thardus fight was just the entire fight was just Stardust rolling around, and that was it. Like that's what this is. Like it's just Samus just rolling around, and you shoot her, and she like gets sent back into the wall, and then like does something, and then you shoot her some more. And then and then at the end, Samus gets buried by rubble, and apparently you have no time to save her. Your objective is more important than checking the rubble. She's like and helping her, like right, like I don't understand why the space pirates seem to have more interest in keeping Samus alive than Federation Marines. Like I don't understand why that is the case. But that's again like this. It makes me laugh. It's so bad that it's almost kind of good in a way. Like when you were sitting there describing it to me, I was like, "This is great. Like this is so good. It's so funny. It's so bad that like
Oh my God.
To like come up with that design and like concept and go through with it and be like, yes, this is it. This is it right here.
It's just like so horrible, and the fight looks horrible, and Samus looks horrible, and like. Oh, it's a miserable experience. It's miserable.
And like there's potential to like have a I mean obviously like when you fight like when you're fighting Dark Samus in other games you're not like fighting Samus, but I think there's potential to have like a boss battle against Samus that would be cool because you know Samus is such a big threat and you don't want to fight her but you have to. But in this way it's like you're not even fighting Samus, you're fighting like a
ball.
giant ball Samus. Like if it was giant Samus, like that, I think still giant Samus is stupid too. But like just fighting Samus herself, I don't think is a bad idea because you know you kind of do that in some ways. Like the SAX is essentially Samus in some ways, and Dark Samus is too. But like to fight Samus herself, I think would be interesting. But they didn't do that. They made giant morph ball Samus. I don't. It's
horrid.
It's so bad. It kind of circles back to good for me. So I had to put it at 11.
This is just horrible. I think that this is the worst part about Federation Force actually, and that's saying something, because there's a lot that I don't really care for Federation Force. But yeah, this final boss battle is just it's like stepping in dog droppings at the park on a hot day. That's what this fight is like. So, yeah, 12 out of 12. All right, let's finish this up, Dak. Everyone listening to this, you've probably noticed that neither Dak nor I have revealed what our number one pick was yet. So, seeing that we've only got one pick left, Dak, take it away.
Well, of course. Mercury Steam, hats off to you, creating the absolute, like, by far, best final boss fight in the series. And, of course, it features my man Ridley. The Proteus Ridley fight from Samus Returns is 20 out of 10. It is a perfectly executed Metroid boss fight, and for the longest time, I even want to make a correction. When we did our Ridley boss fight listing, I'm pretty sure I put Meta Ridley above Proteus Ridley, but I put Proteus Ridley at 2. I might have to change that. I think Proteus Ridley is even the best Ridley fight overall as well. It is certain. It might even be my favorite boss fight. Period. Like it is so awesome. You got the gameplay, which is, you know, straight up Ridley fight, but there's a lot of room. Ridley feels really big still, despite the room you have. A lot of cool attacks he's using. And then the setting. The planet's coming apart. There's like the rain's coming down. The tornado's spinning wildly. You got the baby Metroid floating around. The ship's right there.
Lightning.
The music is absolutely phenomenal. And I love multi-stage fights. 3 amazing phases, and of course the cutscenes. I mean, it was like anime fight. Like Other M wanted to be this so badly, and like this is like when people tell me like, oh, I don't want cinematic Metroid. Like it was bad. Like this is it. Like this was like perfect cinematic Metroid right here. Like you had such a sick. Like they're going blow for blow. It was like Goku versus Frieza on Namek, right? Like the planet's coming apart. There's the two of them just going at it, like just trying to kill each other. Like it was so sick, and I love this fight. I'm so glad that they did this. I know. So I think for the most part, people, I would say the consensus that this was a good idea. Like I would say most Metroid fans, like maybe some are like, it's fan servicey, too much Ridley, blah blah. But I think for the most part, this was well received. I think there's such a good idea to do this. Like it was, I think, you know, obviously adds a little more connection to the Prime games, which was also great. But it really ends the game on such a hugely high note. I think the game would have been worse for it had it not had this fight. I love this fight. It's one of my favorite boss battles in games. Period. It goes too hard. It goes too hard for its own good. Yeah, this is easily number 1 for me.
Yeah, this fight is awesome. It was number one for me as well. And like it's got everything, like the setting, the green clouds, lightning, the storm, and like that ambiance kind of when you get there. I the thing that I really like, two things about this fight that really stick out to me. Actually, three things. Um, the first is that I love the Super Metroid Ridley fight, and I love it because it just feels like a brawl. Like he's hitting you, you're hitting him. There's no strategy. You just like you have to unload everything, and like I love that feeling of like this is a Knuckles brawl in this fight, and this fight like replicates that better than any other Ridley fight. Like this feels like a brawl. Like when Samus and Ridley are like going at it, like they are just beating the tar out of each other in the cutscenes. Like it feels brutal. Like they're throwing each other. You've got fire going. He's swiping at you. Like it's awesome. The other thing that really really works for me in this fight is like I love how the baby Metroid helps you out.
Yeah.
It builds such a connection to that character. It makes Super Metroid better. I think it makes Metroid Fusion better in retrospect. It's so incredible to see this character like fight for you, and like would you have beaten Ridley without the baby Metroid's help? Maybe, maybe not. But like the fact that you're working together, it kind of indebts Samus to the baby Metroid even more so. So like I really really love that, and I think that this just like really makes good use of all of the different mechanics that Metroid Samus Returns introduced, like from the melee counters, which just look brutal when you're countering Ridley, to like I think that like the fighting is just so solid, like the shooting, it felt so nice, and the music is the third thing that really sells this to me. It escalates and kind of reaches a crescendo as you build towards that final area, or the final confrontation. I think you nailed it. Like this fight really uses cutscenes really well. Like you have your gameplay, which is intense. You have the cutscenes, which are intense. It's got everything, I think. And this was an easy number one for me. I do want to say, because I do want to offer some critique, is that I don't love the design of Proteus Ridley, actually. And I think it's kind of weird. Well,
No
I
way.
kind of do, but I kind of don't, because I feel like he's wearing clothes, which is kind of weird to me. But it's not like, I don't think he looks dumb. It just looks kind of weird. So I do want to offer that as like a little bit of critique. But I mean, like this fight, it has everything. It has like the stakes, it has the setting, it has the music, it has the gameplay, it's fun. This has everything, and it was such a good way to end the game. There was that expectation after Zero Mission that they were going to add something to Metroid 2, and they did, and I can't think of anything better than this. And there were some people out there that were complaining, like, oh, Ridley showed up out of nowhere. I don't want to hear it. Play this fight and tell me that you're upset that it's in the game, because I bet you that there's not a single person out there that did that. This is awesome. It's number one for sure.
Oh yeah, and on the how Ridley looks thing, I don't know if you ever seen like the concept art for Proteus Ridley, where he like his wings are kind of like torn a little more, and he has like the radioactive like looking kind of signs. Not like, but like he looked a little more like Meta Ridley, and is like a little less brighter purple. Like he's kind of like a magenta violet in game rather than like the darker purple. And his head looks more like Meta Ridley in the concept art than in game. But his neck's a little long. Again, like bendy straw looking,
Yeah.
and his head looks a little different, but I think he still looks really sick. And I kind of get what you're saying, though. He does kind of look like he's wearing like metal clothes, but I still think he looks really awesome. I think all the designs in the game, like Samus and Ridley themselves, look really really cool. And yeah, I don't think anyone should really have a problem with that. I know like Sakamoto in like an interview said that like Mercury Steam was like, yeah, we should make Ridley the final boss. He was like, oh yeah, like that's a cool surprise. Like people would like that. Yeah, just do that. I also did think it was interesting because I think in that same interview he talked about how apparently the 2D Metroids and the Prime games are different series and have like no direct link between their stories, which I guess for the most part is like true. Like they don't have like a full link between them, even if they might take place in the same timeline. I did think it was interesting though that he said that while also approving Ridley being in the game, but then Mercury Steam went with a Ridley that like very clearly is meant to be formerly Meta Ridley,
Right.
right? You know, because like I guess Sakamoto like only kind of approved Ridley being in the game and maybe didn't have like at all any kind of like input or approval on the final design, or maybe he just didn't care. I don't know, but I always thought that was interesting because if Sakamoto really does believe there's no complete link at all, I mean, there's no explanation for why Proteus Ridley would exist if there was no connection to the Prime games. But whatever.
Yeah.
I still Proteus Ridley design is really cool. I don't think they could have. I don't think they could have done any better. Maybe they could have, but I don't know how they would have improved it. I always loved this fight. It really blew me away. It was such an awesome surprise for me too, and I was like, wow, this was so cool. Like, and especially being a big Ridley fan myself, like finally having Ridley as the final boss and having him show up in like the most epic of Metroid fights ever. Like that was just like, mwah, like icing on the cake for me. Shoutouts to Mercury Steam. I'm glad they did that because they created my favorite Ridley fight, I think. I'm going to have to say that. And probably my favorite boss fight in the Metroid games. So yeah, has to be number one.
You know what? Another like little small detail, but I really love it about this fight too, is like when you defeat Ridley, like he's not dead. He is just unconscious. And I appreciate that because like, the running joke is like Ridley comes back to life so many times, and in this fight it's like you've incapacitated him, but like he's not dead, so like it's it's not another instance of like he's destroyed, now he's come back. So like it's just kind of like you've beat him for now, and I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, that's true, but at the same time it makes me think, why didn't Samus just like two quick ones to the head while he's down, like just to make sure. I would have liked it if like maybe Samus went over to do that, but then like I don't know, something happened that like stopped her from finishing him off or something, because she just like turns her back on him and walks off, which is like only I think happens because the game is developed knowing that Ridley has to show up chronologically later in the series, right? So like otherwise I think logically Samus should have and would have put 2 to the dome, double tap while he's down, and rightfully probably should have, but he didn't for some reason. I think because of the plot rather than it being logical. But I think I'm okay with that. And also want to say I definitely agree what you mentioned earlier with the Baby Metroid getting in. Like I loved how the Baby Metroid like gets some shots in, like sucks some energy out of him, like while like in between Samus doing stuff. Like they like do like two. It's like I love it. It's like it's Rey and Dom Mysterio in the ring. Like I love it. And
it's awesome.
It's great. So yeah, I really awesome fight. I can't say enough about it. I feel like we could spend a whole episode talking about it, and feels like we have been for a little bit. But it's such a great. I'm glad that this was the last one we talked about too, because this is you gotta save the best for last. Nicely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna really quickly just read you off my list from 12 to 1.
Okay.
Before we get out of here, so 12 by far Samus and Master Brain, 11 Ridley Robot, 10 Mother Brain from Metroid NES, number 9 Goria, 8 Omega Metroid, 7 Metroid Queen, 6 Dark Samus, 5 Phantoon, 4 Aurora Unit 313, 3 Mother Brain from Super Metroid, 2 Metroid Prime, 1 Proteus Ridley.
I have to cement my list, but as I look at this list, I feel like I'd make some changes, but I'm gonna run through what I have. 12, I have NES Mother Brain. 11, I have Morph Ball Samus. 10, I have Ridley Robot. 9, I have the Metroid Queen from Return of Samus. 8, I have Mother Brain from Super. 7, I have Dark Samus from Prime 2. 6, I have Aurora Unit 313 from Prime 3. 5, I have Omega Metroid from Fusion. 4, I have Phantoon from the game that must not be named. 3, I have Goria from Hunters. 2, I have Metroid Prime/Prime from Prime. And number 1... the only Proteus Ridley from Samus Returns. A nautical mile ahead in first place. Actually, maybe not a nautical mile, because I would say Metroid Prime and Prime fight is also really, 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 really good. But yeah, at least for me, like best Ridley fight, best 2D Metroid fight, Proteus Ridley, Metroid Prime, 3D Metroid. But yeah, I think our lists were pretty similar.
They were fairly consistent for the most part. Yeah. Which doesn't always happen, so that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're running long. Dak, anything that you want to say before we get on out of here for this week?
All I'm thinking of is that I'm sure as I think about this list more, I'll reconsider it. So if anyone gets at me about my placements, well, I might be like, oh, you're probably right. I'm trying to think. I hope we get some Metroid news. I feel like we're not getting any major Nintendo news for the rest of the year, man. I think that the days
No,
of
probably not.
it feels like it was so long ago, but just remember over the summer when we were getting our Metroid Prime trilogy and Super Mario 3D collection rumors every week. Like I miss those days, man. Everyone banded together on the internet to talk, to call out those clickbaity news articles. But here we are in the end of October. It feels like there's nothing. I mean, all I can think of that's coming out is what, Age of Calamity and the re-release of Super Mario 3D World Land or whatever. Like I don't like what's coming. What's on the way? I wish I knew. I hope we
3.
find out. Oh, that's not a new game though.
I'm stoked for Pikmin 3, to be honest. There's Pikmin 3. There's Age of Calamity. And well, by God, there's Fire Emblem for the NES, which is getting localized for the first time ever for its 30th anniversary, which is upsetting because Nintendo just skipped right over Metroid's 30th anniversary.
That's the thing is Metroid needs waifus, it needs dating, it needs anime. That's what that Fire Emblem got, the anime treatment, and look, it's getting its 30th anniversary celebrated. It's getting localized. I'm telling you, man, we got an anime Metroid. And Nintendo will celebrate every yearly anniversary. Trust me.
There you go. Let us know what you think of our list and tell us what your favorite final boss battles of Metroid series are. We're going to get on out of here. Of course, we want you to check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. I am Aspateri316 and Dak is at DakCity_. And of course, recommend us to a Metroid fan in your life. Tell them where they can get their weekly Metroid fix, and be sure to check us out over on iTunes, Google Pods, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Go and like and subscribe. That is going to do it for us. Until next time, guys. We'll see you then.